So the question is, do I recommend the BMW R18? Welcome y'all to my little review here of the BMW R18. I'm just gonna get right to the points. I'm gonna cover some of the things that people question me about. I get asked a lot of the same questions about potential issues that people think on this bike. Give you my personal opinion on them, some of the things I like, some of the things I dislike, all in today's video. Now, if you're new to my channel and you have not watched before, please consider going and smashing that subscribe button. There's a lot of motorcycle style content and just a little window inside my life, which revolves so much around these two wheels. Today I'm in Florida. I'm at the Eurocycles of Tampa Bay. They were kind enough to loan this motorcycle to me while I went to a camp out here locally. Let's start with styling. I don't think you can say anything other than it is really a refined piece of machinery. We're referring to these bikes a lot as jewelry because that's truly what they feel like. They're just gorgeous. They're just very luxurious. And they're just crafted incredibly well. I love the craftsmanship of the bike. I love the lines, the old school look. I think the engine, I just think it's a work of art. I just love the engine. It truly is a work of art, and it's completely different than the V-twin. We'll talk about that in the video as well. The fairing is kind of that Batwing style, a little bit Road King-ish, but a bit more sleek. This is kind of a cool feature. It's for adaptive cruise control and things like that, so that it'll slow down and create the distance, and really some of the technology you see in some of the newer cars we're now finding in the motorcycle world, which I personally think is pretty cool. The exhaust on this bike is much different than some of the other R18s out there because of the saddlebags, I'm assuming, but I think it looks good. LEDs all the way around, and this massive touchscreen, which we'll talk about some pros and cons about that in this video as well. The speaker sound system, Marshall, I think that's pretty cool. They went with a quality known name brand speaker system in it, and it really shows in the audio. Unfortunately, the audio never translates over the internet, so people will be like, turn it on, but really, if you're listening on your phone or your computer, the best you're gonna hear is what your phone or computer has, not what this has. So that never really works out in reviews, sorry guys. Let's talk performance. Performance is a big thing here. This bike is so well balanced. In fact, that motor is so well balanced, even my low speed turns, I found myself able to go full lock, not have to lean off the bike, not have to lean the bike over. Seemed incredibly smooth and well balanced. I think having those two cylinders on the side, although it looks cumbersome, technically I think it helps with the balance. Truly is. Going down the interstate, I put a couple hundred miles on it here for this review, and it just rides so smooth. The transmission's so smooth, balance is so smooth when you're banking into corners and leaning and changing lanes. It just feels confident and substantial. It's definitely a smooth riding motorcycle. The suspension travel isn't all that long on these things, but this suspension must be adjusted better than what my R18 at home is, because it felt substantially smoother than my other R18. Even though I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe the suspension is identical. Torque and power, this engine is what it's all about. That parallel twin coming out both sides is something much different than what a lot of people are used to when it comes to, American V-twins. The American V-twin, you've got one cylinder behind the other, and they stand upright like this. Doesn't stick out like this does, which gives some obvious advantages we'll talk about later. But this cools better because both cylinders in the air, one's not trapped behind the other, being suffocated for air. No need to have rear cylinder shutoffs or things like that on a bike like this. So your power is going to be more consistent. That is without question. The torque on this thing is probably my favorite part about it. And to me, torque is king over horsepower 10 out of 10 times. I want to be able to lay on that throttle, even if I'm in maybe a gear too high or gear too low. Maybe if I'm even in the wrong gear, I want to be able to lay on that throttle. I want to have the torque to pull me through. This really has that. You can feel the power in the seat of your pants when it comes to this engine. The seating position with the handlebars, I found it to be very comfortable. Okay, you got to think I'm 6'2", 220 pounds, and this bike sat just about perfect for me when it came to ergonomics. The braking is great, front and rear, no issues with the braking at all. I felt very confident and super capable. This little guy right down here is your reverse gear. You can actually put this motorcycle in reverse and it'll back up for you. Now, myself, I was at this camp out and I was in some grass and I had to back up kind of up a little bit of a hill. And although this bike sits super low, I still found myself, had a little hump there I couldn't get over. And so even though I never thought I would use the reverse, I actually did use the reverse in a real life situation, not because I was trying to test it, but because it literally made parking the motorcycle easier. So it's the only motorcycle that I own is my R18 with the reverse, and I always kind of thought reverse was, maybe if for a short inseam or something like that might be a really, really nice thing, but I never really thought it would be something I would need, especially on a bike that sits this low. This bike sits much lower than any Road King or Road Glide or anything like that on the market. If you're looking at a touring bike, this thing sits substantially lower than any other, but that dang reverse still did come in handy. I just can't deny it. It's the truth. I very much like the dash. I like the look of the dash. I like the look of the gauges. I really like the wide screen. I think it gives it a unique look, and I think it fits well to the motorcycle. The mirrors are good. I had plenty of vision out of those mirrors. No issues there. The adaptive cruise control, as I mentioned earlier, worked really well. I was able to use it on the interstate, and it's a great feature. The drive shaft, the exposed open drive shaft. This is another wonderful thing to this motorcycle. I love the drive shaft. I wish more motorcycles were operating on drive shafts personally. So let's talk some of the things that people ask me about, the things that really stand out to a lot of the American bikers that are looking at this bike. And these are the questions I get asked all the time about things that people think are going to be problems. I'm going to say the biggest thing that I hear from people online is the foot controls, the position of your feet with those two cylinders out front. What kind of issues come from that, from not being able to put your feet in front of you? People ask about heat from the cylinders and some other things. So first thing, heat from the cylinder. I have not seen any issues yet. I've ridden these motorcycles now, maybe a little over 1,000 miles, and I have had no issues with heat on my legs, on my feet, nothing like that. I think having both those jugs in the air makes it just run quite a bit cooler than what we're used to on a traditional V-twin, where that exhaust pipe's coming out right under your leg. You don't have that here. Those exhaust pipes are coming out of the front, so you don't get that under the crotch heat, and you just don't notice the heat from the cylinders. I guess also having that pipe come out of the front of the cylinder means that's getting more air too, and that also I think is helping keep things cooler, which again translates to more consistent power. So all in all, the heat on the cylinders by your feet, not a problem. The next question is the foot position. Now for myself, I'm 6'2", 220 pounds as I mentioned. I think it's a great seating position. My leg feels good. It's a mid control, more than a forward control, which gives you more control of the motorcycle. It's better performance rated. Any type of performance bike you look at are going to be running with mid controls. So you've got a superior foot position for the actual riding experience. Now, when it comes to cruising, there's not a lot of places to put your feet up here, and that is what most people are talking about and complaining about, because, well, a lot of the Harley and Indian riders, they like to have their feet out in front of them. I have floorboards in front of my bikes, and I use them out front like this a little bit, which, I can still hang off here, and maybe a guy could get some sort of a lower peg, maybe something like that would work, maybe some aftermarket parts that way. But getting up here, that's never felt really good for me. In fact, what I do when I'm touring long distance, typically, rather than putting my feet in front of me, I like to run my feet behind me. It rolls me off of my butt. I'm not getting on the same hot spots, and it moves my back posture, and it's just more comfortable for me. So for me, the forward controls is not really an issue either, although it seems to be one of the biggest concerns for people out there. I think there'll be some aftermarket stuff that'll probably come out, but for me, it's really not a problem at all. More of the things that I really felt like could use some work were the integration between the GPS and my phone, right? On this program, you've got to hook, from what I understand, you got to hook the GPS to your phone and run it that way. And to me, well, it was just a little less intuitive, and it took a little more time to get into the app, take the address from Google, put it in the app, then connect the app to the bike. It was just a few more steps than I would like to see. So I think, that is something that I would say could use maybe some improvement. Another thing that I think is a really great concept, they've got this spot here where you can put your phone and it charges. It's even got a little fan down there. But unfortunately, if you're running an OtterBox, or if you've got like one of those pogo things on the back of your phone, it's not going to fit in there, and that function kind of becomes obsolete for your riding experience. The two things that I really would have loved to see would be this made bigger, or available to hold a bigger phone, because I love the idea of just putting your phone in there and it charging through the back. And I would love to see the GPS on its own. Other than that, all the other technology on this thing I think is just spot on, perfect, dialed in very well. The next thing for me is the saddlebag size. So I'm gonna say these saddlebags are very equivalent to like a soft bag on a motorcycle. They're not what we'd expect from a traditional hard bag on a touring motorcycle. I love the way they open. They open very easy, but there's just not a ton of space in there. You've got the speaker there taking up some space, and then it seems like a thick kind of liner in here. It really just eats up a lot of space. So unfortunately, I was not able to put everything I expected to be able to put in these saddlebags. Here I got a hoodie, some paperwork, some stickers, a helmet bag, and that's it. It's pretty much full from an empty helmet bag and a sweatshirt. I mean, I can get some more on there, obviously, but it's fairly full. Everything else I can say about the bike, all the cruise control and all these functions are pretty good. They've got this rolling dial for going through the screens, which is pretty nice. I don't like blinkers on one bar. I like my left on the left, my right on the right, but most brands do it this way. It's just not my favorite. I like the traditional right and left blinker. I don't think that'll ever change for me. All in all, this motorcycle is much different than any American V-twin bike. And please note, the chain is up. This place is closed. I'm not just eating up a handicap parking spot here. It's just different. And really, that's what it comes down to, is just another option, something a little bit different. It's got some advantages to the traditional V-twin baggers, and there are also some disadvantages to the American V-twin baggers. This, to me, is just a unique, different, it's just a luxurious, it's just, I don't know how to explain it, but it makes me feel great. I love the bike. I think it's an amazing bike. I prefer the no fairing and the stripped down model, more of a beach cruiser style. I think that's really where this bike fits in my lifestyle. But nonetheless, a very capable motorcycle, a beautiful machine, super smooth. I'm half tempted to call and see if I can just ride this thing across the country, because I'd like to see what a long distance road trip would feel like on this. I don't think the floorboards would be an issue for me, though. I just don't. I know it's the number one concern I hear from all of you out there, but to me, it's just not a big deal. There's a lot of motorcycles out there that have mid controls and no forward controls. I think it's just something we're accustomed to, and the side cylinders sticking out are a little bit different to get used to. But again, once you're riding, it's not really an issue. You don't notice it. And I think the performance advantages it gives you are pretty substantial. So the question is, do I recommend the BMW R18? The answer is this: I don't know that there's a motorcycle I've ever ridden that I don't recommend. If you like the bike, if you like the looks, if you like the feel, then it's the right bike for you. My recommendation is to get out and test ride one. Do it for yourself. Maybe try to get it on a little bit longer than a few minute test ride, because frankly, there are some differences and some nuances that at first are going to feel completely foreign to you, and you're going to feel like, oh, I don't like this, because it's different. But once you take some miles on it, and once you settle in and you start to just enjoy the motorcycle, those things that like freaked you out in the beginning end up being like not big deals at all. My opinion. R18, huge motor, pretty comfortable, great seating position. I don't feel the need to raise or lower the bars. I don't feel the need to have a different seat. It really feels good right from the factory, the way it sits, and that is another huge advantage. I think it's exactly what some of us riders are looking for, just something a little bit out of the normal, a little bit out of, what everybody else is doing. I dig it. And I seen one all blacked out one time, and it was just really beautiful. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed my quick review. If you want statistics and prices and stuff like that, just Google R18 stats and you'll get all that. I will give you the price right there. That's the MSRP on it, but of course, that's all going to depend on what options, and there's just so many things you can do to these things that will quickly change the price. Nonetheless, thank you all for tuning into my video. I hope I gave you some information, a little insight from a guy who's done a lot of miles on American V-twin baggers and a few miles on this now, and like I said, I like the bike. I am glad to have one similar to it sitting in my garage. We'll talk to y'all later. Have a great day.